'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Look at the pictures. Sticky pages. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled down to a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw out the sash. The moon, on the breast of the new fallen snow, gave a luster to midday, to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. Sorry about licking the finger, but the pages are slick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Oh, there's a beautiful picture. Can you see it at all? Yeah. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney he came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his toe, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back. He looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, and his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. Another beautiful picture. The stump of a pipe. That's not politically correct. Not in a children's book. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like the bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf. And he laughed when I saw him I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye, a twist of his head, soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word. He went straight to his work. He filled all of the stockings, then turned with a jerk. and laying a finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Thank you very much. Oh, that's great. And wow.
That one's my favorite.
This just happens to be my favorite. It's your favorite too?
Yes.
But I'm going to read it. Because it's my favorite.
I'll wrestle for it.
That's all right. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I think this story has a message that's as good now as it was in 1957 when this was written. By Dr. Seuss. How the Grinch Stole Christmas for Teddy Owens. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town, where he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, "I must find some way to keep Christmas from coming." For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early and they'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise, and the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise, 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 noise. And then the Who, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of the Who Christmas thing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. He chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer. And the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer were scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags, some old empty sacks, on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. And the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were dreaming sweet dreams without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. "This is stop number one," the Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed up to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch. But if Santa could do it, so could the Grinch. And he stuck his head out of the, only got stuck for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present, the pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, and the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all of the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox, and he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Now he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee, and now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove, and he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove, and he turned around fast and saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. Then the Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch. He was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there. Now, bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child, and he patted her head and got her a drink and sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. The last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing at the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. And he packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Trumpet he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh-pooh to the Who's," he was grinchiously humming, "and they're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a moment or two. Then all the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo." "That's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started out low, and it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so. But it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. For every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load down through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast.